Hello, I'm Mr. Howard Yu. Today, I'm doing a YouTube free lessons for students in primary 6 who are doing the topic on photosynthesis. So these are the questions of open-ended questions I have discussed with my students in my class last week. And this is also an opportunity for them to review the corrections. So for new students who are contemplating to join my training, you can also attempt to do these questions before I review the answers. So parents, do stay in tune. So this will be the first question that we discuss. As you can see here, that this setup, there's a lamp, plunger, air spaces, syringe, water plant, and all these. So they say, suggest what will happen to water level Q, which is here, if the plunger is fixed in position. If this plunger is fixed in position, that means this plunger cannot move up or down, it is fixed. So look at the student's answer here. The students answered by saying it will drop, which is correct. The plant will receive the light from the lamp and photosynthesize. Although there's a grammatical error because the student gave the noun photosynthesis, but there's no deduction of marks. As for science, we do not deduct any grammatical mistake. So the essence of this is students must be able to tell the examiner that in the presence of light, the water plant is carrying out the process of photosynthesis. And during this process, oxygen is being released. So the oxygen produced or released will actually take up the space and therefore pushing the water level down. So this is actually the model answer which students should present. Water level Q will drop. So this is to state what will happen. The water plant receives light from the lamp, carries out photosynthesis, and produces oxygen. And this is the place that you need to explain, give your reason why the water level drops. So you must mention that the oxygen takes up more space in the air spaces, okay, in the air spaces here, and pushes more water from the syringe into the glass tube. Hence, the water level in the glass tube drop. So this is a 2-mark questions, and students need to be aware that they must indicate the reason, because there are many students who are not careful, they lost 1 mark. Or in this situation, the student incomplete answers will cause him a loss of half mark. Let's proceed to the next question. In these questions, students should be able to interpret the information from the bar graph here and also the line graph here. So this is the question. Stefano conducted an experiment to find out how the amount of light affects the growth of his plant. The result of the experiments are shown here. Okay, so the student need to be aware that as the light intensity increases, the average number of leaves on each plant also increase. But many students are not careful in interpreting this second line graph. As you can see on this axis is the amount of light, which is also the same as here, the light intensity. So they can actually do markings on here, which I'd like to annotate for you, as you can see here. They can actually annotate here. So for example, like even putting the number 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say this is 4 and this is 1. So if there's a light unit of 1, the average height of the plant is higher, isn't it? Compared to when the light unit is 4. So what does this show? It shows that actually when the plant receives more light, the average height of the plant is not higher, but shorter. So therefore, the student need to fill in the blanks here using the above information here. So the greater the amount of light, the more leaves. Why more leaves? Because you can see here, the average number of leaves increases as light intensity increases. So they can also indicate like this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just some generic number there. Okay, so the greater the amount of light, the more leaves the plant has, and the shorter. Why shorter? As I already told you, the average height decreases as light intensity increases. So let us look at the second part. They say that overcrowded plants tend to receive less light than plants that grow far apart. Based on Stefano's finding, that's mean when you answer this section here, you must base on this finding. Okay, based on Stefano's finding, how are crowded plants different from plants that grow far apart? So actually crowded plants, they will receive what? Less light, right? So can you see less light? As light intensity, this part is less light. So this is less light. So using this information, so if the plants are crowded, they receive less light. So you must indicate they will have lesser number of leaves and the height is greater. So let's see the model answer, which should be presented in this manner. Overcrowded plants would be taller and have fewer leaves than plants that grow far apart. So there's a comparison. Overcrowded plants would be taller, as we can see here, this part, and have fewer leaves. Okay, so there's a comparison that's needed to be presented. Let's move on to the next question on photosynthesis. Okay, by the way, this is a typical PSLE science question. It has been tested for a few years, if not at least twice in the past PSLE examinations. So do study carefully this question, which may appear in your prelim or even in this year with slight modification of the question. So a few drops of liquid P is added to each test tube. Liquid P changes color according to the amount of carbon dioxide in the water. So this is what I will teach students to do, to annotate. So they can see that actually this liquid P changes color according to what? The amount of carbon dioxide in the water. So they must be able to interpret this information presented. So can you see from here, there's an arrow here. So as the amount of carbon dioxide increases, there's a shift of color from purple to red to yellow. And due to the darkening of the printing, there are actually numbers inside here. So like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there's a color coding or numerical coding. So the question here comes, in which test tube would liquid P be yellow? Give your answer. So actually, look at the student answer here. And personally, I find that this question should be allocated 2 marks instead of 1 mark. So therefore, I change it to 2 marks because the answer is actually quite lengthy. Firstly, the student need to indicate which test tube and then give the reason. So firstly, the student got to understand, if you want to change to yellow color, that means the amount of carbon dioxide in the test tube must be maximum. How to have maximum amount of carbon dioxide? Firstly, they must know that in the process of respiration, carbon dioxide is produced. So respiration happens in all living things. Respiration happens in all living things. So even in plants and in animals. So they must select a test tube which has a maximum number of organisms. So actually there are 2 possibilities, C and D. Okay, there's one important information they need to take note, because in setup D, there's this black box. Black box will prevent any light from entering. Therefore, the aquatic plant inside will not be able to carry out photosynthesis. Therefore, the plant respires all the time together with the water snail. So therefore, this is the reason. So as long as the students can present the answer telling the examiner that in the absence of light, due to the black box, the water plant cannot receive light for photosynthesis, it respires together with the water snail. Therefore, the amount of carbon dioxide is maximum and it will turn the liquid P to yellow. So this is the model answer which the student should present. In test tube D, in the absence of light, the plant cannot carry out photosynthesis. Both the snail and plant carry out respiration and produce carbon dioxide. So there's an indication of, can you see here? Both the snail and the plant carry out respiration and produce carbon dioxide. Hence, the amount of carbon dioxide in water increases, turning liquid P from red to yellow. Clear? So that's why this lengthy answer should be awarded 2 marks. Okay, next, we can see in the next question. Let me clear screen to move on to the next question. It's the same question here and part B here. In which test tube would liquid P be definitely purple? So I told the student to underline this. Definitely means 100%. So definitely purple, that means it must has the lowest amount of carbon dioxide. So lowest amount of carbon dioxide, the student must understand that this will happen if photosynthesis is taking place. So which test tube can you see is B? Because if you choose C, there's a water snail there, it respires. But in the presence of light, photosynthesis is able to produce more oxygen than carbon dioxide being produced. So once again, do take note of the model answer here. Test tube B. So this is the reason. Right? Give your reason. There is only one plant in the test tube. The plant takes in more carbon dioxide for photosynthesis in the presence of light than it releases during respiration. So the student, he must compare that in the process of photosynthesis, the aquatic plant or the plant, if let's say is above water, actually produces more oxygen than carbon dioxide. So from here, the student actually must know that, or this information helps the student to recall the fact that respiration happens all the time, even in the process of photosynthesis. So I make a short note here. From here, we can deduce that respiration happens all the time, even during photosynthesis. And I told my student who is in my class to memorize this fact, which is actually being written on page 31 of the Science Bible. Why is it called the Science Bible? Because just like the Bible you bring to church every Sunday, they have to bring this book which I authored every time during my lesson. So let me clear the screen and show you later the copy of my book. So let's look at this question, the next question. Again, this experiment shows there's a torch here being switched on. There is a oil here, bubbles, and this is the result of the experiment. So once again, students is to suggest what variable X could be. From my observation, there are quite a number of students, they do not know how to interpret or present the answers for such, I call the inverse relationship graph or direct inverse relationship. That means as variable X increases, right, the number of bubbles decreases. So this is one trick which I like to teach students. You annotate on the graph, okay? Annotate on the graph. So for example here, you do markings here, okay? So for example, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So let's say variable X is 4. If you dot a line across here, you will see it has a lower value compared to, if I use another color, let's say at 1. If you do a line here, it's at a higher value. So this value is high and the other value is lower. So it's easier to make comparison. So when variable X is low at 1 unit, the amount of bubbles produced or the number of bubbles is high. So naturally, they can see that actually X represents the distance between the torch and the water plant. And you can see here the student actually lost half a mark because the student did not give the reason. So they have to read the questions very carefully. And this is the answer that they should present. Variable X could be, because they say suggest, okay, could be the distance between the torch and water plant. And this is the reason. So the reason actually is quite useful to memorize. Increasing the distance between the light source and the plant would decrease the amount of light received by the plant. This would decrease the rate of photosynthesis. So there's a relationship here, the direct relationship. Lesser light intensity, lower rate of photosynthesis. Clear? And finally, what is the purpose of the thermometer and water bath? So student asked me, hey, Mr. Yu, what is water bath? Okay, water bath means in this, can you see it in this setup? Perhaps there's a heating element here, which they did not show. A water bath means they heat up something indirectly using water as a medium instead of direct heating over a flame. So it's to make sure or to ensure that the temperature is constant. So this answer for this. Let's move on to the next question. And this is very similar. We just place different colored filters on a torch in order to shine different colored lights on some water plant as shown here. So they say which filter acts as a control. So definitely the answer is colorless. And they ask you after 20 minutes, Weijie observed the number of bubbles produced decrease. Suggest why. So at first, this student do not know how to answer, and this is the correction. Because the amount of carbon dioxide in the water decreased. Hence, the water plants photosynthesize at a lower rate. And this is the model answer. The colorless filter acts as a control. The amount of carbon dioxide in the water decreased. Hence, the water plant photosynthesize at a lower rate. And perhaps there's another possible answer because they say suggest why. I do accept this answer if the student say the energy in the batteries of the torch is decreasing. Because as they study energy, right, the chemical potential energy in the batteries is converted into electrical energy. So over the span of 20 minutes time, the chemical potential energy in the battery has been used up. So it has decreased. So this will cause lower light intensity. So this answer can be acceptable. And this is what I mentioned about the book I published, The Science Bible. It has helped many students over the past years, and these are some accolades from parents. And I'd like to screen share one of the page inside of this book, which is on page 31, which I mentioned earlier. Let me do a pause here for a short while. As I mentioned, this is page 31 of the book which I published. Students are actually required to know the photosynthesis equation, which I told my student to memorize in this part. Carbon dioxide plus water change to glucose plus oxygen. So sometimes the word glucose is used interchangeably with the word food or sugar. So in the presence of light and chlorophyll, this process, photosynthesis, is taking place. And do remember, as I told you, that respiration happens all the time in all living things. So actually students are also required to know the difference between photosynthesis and respiration. And actually this is a respiration equation. Sugar plus oxygen change to water plus carbon dioxide plus energy. So remember I told the students earlier, respiration happens all the time in all living things. When it stops, death sets in. So in other words, even when plants are having photosynthesis, the process of respiration is taking place. So teachers do take note also to highlight this to students, because if the living things or the plant stop respiring, indirectly it means that the plant died, because respiration is a life-giving process. And if you want to know more about explanation, you can actually scan on this QR code. which I've embedded inside my book. So once again, I welcome students to purchase a copy of this book of mine, and also for educators and parents. So let's continue with my presentation in the next question here, or an introduction. So actually, as you know, that many parents are concerned about their students because more than 70% of P3 to P6 students has difficulty in giving accurate scientific answers to open-ended questions. So in my training, I help students to focus in answering and mastering open-ended questions with our SEAL training. So what is SEAL training? Navy SEAL. So they can also subscribe to my One Academy Science channel, and these are the resources I'm helping them. And this is what I call the SEAL training, Scientific Experiential Application Learning. And personally, I believe that no pupils is too difficult to coach for science. So coming this year, especially for P5 students, I do highly encourage you to join my coaching as soon as possible, because P5 actually has a lot of content to learn. Logically, you see in P5, the student actually learns science from January all the way to October before the SA2. But for P6, they finish the whole P6 syllabus by mid-April or latest by end April. So the content in P5, they actually doubled of P6, because in most schools, P5 and P6 has the same number of science periods per week. So this is my portfolio, and I'm very passionate in helping students to master their open-ended answering technique well. And this is my timetable. And most important, this is my contact number. Do a screenshot or freeze the screen to take note of my number here, 8268-5299. So I welcome parents to contact me as soon as possible, because for this year P6, I have limited vacancy. And for students who need help for English, they can also contact me, because I'm giving this tutor opportunity to help small group of students, up to a maximum of only 4 students in my learning center. And also for students who are in P5 or up to secondary, they can also have Chinese tuition, up to a maximum of 4 students in my learning center at Beauty World. So I wish you all of you very well in this coming year. Stay safe, take care, and God bless. And this is Mr. Howard Yu. I wish you all the best. Do review the questions we have gone through for your corrections for students in my class, and for potential new student, you can use it as a training aid. And for parents, you can also use it to compare with other tutors' training. So I wish you all the best. Looking forward to see you in One Academy. Take care. God bless.